Welcome to episode 19 of Basically a Therapist, but without the degree. I'm Lauren Larson, and I am just beyond excited that you're here with me. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for me and like and share, do all the things because we are out here trying to reach people and help them experience peace and freedom, and I can't do that without you. And so if you help me by sharing and liking and tagging and subscribing, it would mean the world to me. So today we are going to be talking about how to resolve conflict biblically in 5 steps. I recently had a TikTok video pop off, and it had to do with boundaries and family. And it clearly resonates with a lot of people because there are a lot of comments. And through those comments that I am reading, I'm seeing a lot of people saying that they have cut people off, family, friends, whatever. And I can understand why that needs to happen sometimes. I get it. But I want to make sure that we are not reaching, that's not our first step, that cutting somebody off isn't the first thing that we do. And so I want to talk about how to resolve conflict first and talk about cutting off kind of being like a last ditch effort. So we are called to seek reconciliation. That is the main priority in conflict, is to seek reconciliation. You know, God doesn't just want us to push people away or cut them off or throw them out if we are offended, if they've hurt us, if they've betrayed us, if they've whatever. We are to seek reconciliation. Matthew 5:23 through 24 in the Passion Translation says, "So then if you are presenting a gift before the altar and suddenly you remember a quarrel you have with a fellow believer, leave your gift there in front of the altar and go at once to apologize to the one who is offended. Then, after you have reconciled, come to the altar and present your gift." It is so important that we do not have outstanding, unresolved unforgiveness with other people. Like God literally would rather us not come to him and go fix the issue with somebody than to come to him with unforgiveness, with unresolved conflict going on. And I want to talk about what it means and what it looks like to seek reconciliation. So to seek reconciliation, it means you are actively pursuing the restoration of the relationship and or resolving the conflict. It involves acknowledging past issues, past offenses, and extending forgiveness and working towards healing and restoration. In seeking reconciliation, it requires humility. It requires empathy. It requires a genuine interest in rebuilding the relationship and trust and understanding with one another. And this doesn't mean that this happens overnight. It can be a process. It will be a process for some. But the goal is reconciliation. Here are some key ways on what it means to seek reconciliation. Acknowledge the hurt. It begins with acknowledging the offense, the pain, the hurt that's been caused, and it involves taking responsibility for one's own role in that conflict. It also involves extending forgiveness. This is a crucial part in our life, especially as believers. We are called to forgive over and over and over again because that is what God does for us. He constantly forgives us all day, every day. And so forgiveness is about letting go of feelings of resentment, bitterness, revenge, retaliation, And it's letting God take care of it. It's giving it to God and letting him deal with it. Another aspect in seeking reconciliation is initiating communication. So we all know how important effective communication is. And this involves initiating that dialogue. Maybe there's somebody that you're not speaking to anymore, and there's this unresolved conflict. I would encourage you to lay down the pride and to initiate conversation. Obviously, this is going to be done in a respectful, healthy, honest, loving, kind way. But it's better to say that you tried than to just let it sit there unresolved, nagging at you, weighing on you. It's like a cloud that just is like hanging over your head all the time. And if you're anything like me, if there is conflict or an issue or anything like that, I obsess about it in my head. It takes up so much brain space that I have a hard time concentrating or giving my all to anyone or anything else. And so for me, selfishly, like I want to get rid of it. I want to dump it. I don't like the feeling of having unresolved conflict. And this has changed in my life because I used to be the person that was too scared to start the dialogue, too scared to say that I was offended, or too scared to say that somebody offended me or hurt my feelings or whatever. And now I just don't even want it weighing on me anymore. Life is too short and I have nothing to lose. And so I want to get it off my plate, get it out of my head. Initiate the communication. Seeking reconciliation also requires a commitment to change and growth. And so I think this is where it gets really important on what a relationship looks like with somebody. Is it going to continue, or is there going to be some distance? And this is important that we don't hit the cutoff button too fast and too soon, that we are giving people the opportunity to make the change. So committing to change and growth involves making amends, seeking forgiveness, demonstrating like genuine remorse. Because you can tell if somebody's really sorry or not. And you can tell by their actions. And then it also requires taking legitimate steps towards resolving underlying issues and patterns that contributed to the conflict. So again, and maybe this is with distance, that we allow, let's say that we are the offended party and we have spoken and we have let them know that they have hurt us and they have acknowledged our hurt. We have extended forgiveness. The communication's happening. We need to give them the opportunity to change if they are willing. We don't cut it off because they hurt us. That's not healthy conflict resolution. That is avoidance. We need to give people the opportunity to show up in the way that we need them to. We are all out here learning how to be in relationship with each other in the moment. And a lot of us didn't have healthy relationships modeled to us when we were younger. So many people have not been modeled healthy marriages, healthy friendships, healthy family relationships. And so maybe they're acting out of what's normal for them, but not what's healthy. And sometimes it takes them being in relationship with somebody that is more mature, further down the road, wiser, that can mentor them, that can help them, that can be patient enough to let them learn and grow. We don't have to be that person, but it's just a different way of looking at it, that we are all learning how to be in relationship with each other. Every day is a brand new day. And it's a brand new situation. It's a brand new moment that we haven't experienced yet. Just like being a parent, every day is a new day that they're this age. It's a new day. It's a new time. It's a new moment. It's a new opportunity. It's a new experience. And so with that, and I'll talk about this later, is we need to have this grace for people. Because we are also going to need that grace extended to us. We have had that grace extended to us by our amazing God. So if somebody is willing and committed to changing their patterns and their behaviors, and they're actively working on things, give them a shot. And I'm not saying that you have to be in relationship with them like you used to be, but you don't need to cut it off either. They should get an opportunity. Seeking reconciliation also involves finding common ground, compromise, and identifying, shared goals for the relationship, shared values within each other and in the relationship. And this can also serve as the foundation of rebuilding the relationship. We want to focus on areas of agreement and mutual respect, and we can bridge those differences and work towards a relationship that's collaborative. And I know that might sound weird. It kind of sounds businessy, but we are collaborating with one another. We are figuring out what works for each other. We're figuring out what works best for the relationship. Sometimes we need to seek professional help. Again, let's say marriage, for example. You're not going to automatically rush to divorce because there's an argument or a fight. There are steps that you take. There are steps that should be taken. This can also be very helpful for family relationships, siblings, parents. If they are willing to seek professional help with you, that would be amazing. There is a willingness, there is an openness to it. So if things are really bad in that relationship, or if you have cut somebody off and maybe you're thinking, that might have been a little bit too aggressive. Maybe I didn't need to cut them out. Own up to that with them. Lay down the pride, lay down the ego, own up to that with them, and see if they would be willing to take these steps. Backtrack. Try again. You have nothing to lose at this point, especially if you've already cut them out. You've got nothing to lose. But offer to go to counseling together, or talk to a pastor at your church. Seek professional help together. This professional can teach you communication skills, new perspectives, a different way of thinking, conflict resolution skills, strategies, all sorts of things that maybe you haven't thought of. Boundaries are so important. I'm a broken record when it comes to boundaries. They are so important in our relationships because they help protect our mental, spiritual, physical, emotional well-being. They're important. And they don't have to be rigid. And they don't have to be flexible. And I know it's so hard. I think so many people are looking for black and white, a definitive answer, an either or. And a lot of this is both and. There's a lot of gray area. It depends on the other person. It depends on the situation. It depends on so many different things. So it's hard to give one solid piece of advice, because you're taking into consideration, well, what did this person say? What did they do? What are they thinking? What are they feeling? What did they say? How are they handling the situation? There's just so many different moving parts. But there are some people that you need to be more rigid in your boundaries. There's those people that will just take and take and take and take and take, and you have to just stand firm and you cannot move with them. And then there's some people that are respectful and they're kind to your boundaries, or maybe you realize you were too harsh in your boundaries and you can change. And so it's hard. But I want to talk about cutting people off. Like I said at the beginning of this episode, I have seen so many people in the comments of this specific video on TikTok saying that they have cut people out of their lives, a lot of family. And that is heartbreaking, that is what they felt they needed to do. And maybe that is what was necessary. I don't know. Again, it can be a gray area. Cutting somebody off, it involves like completely ending or significantly reducing the interaction that you have with somebody. And this usually occurs when someone repeatedly violates your boundaries, exhibits toxic behavior, is abusive, poses a threat to your emotional, mental, physical, spiritual well-being. And this is a drastic measure than just setting a boundary. And so that's why I want to say that this is the extreme. This should be the very last thing that you are reaching for. This is where things are not getting better. The person refuses to change their ways. They refuse to accept accountability for their actions. They refuse to change the unhealthy behavior or pattern. There's an unwillingness. There's no, they just refuse. But before the cutting off, this is where you have tried to make amends, to seek healing, to seek reconciliation, to forgive, to acknowledge the hurt, to initiate the communication, to find common ground, to seek help. Cutting off is the last resort. Another biblical approach to resolving conflict is to speak the truth in love. Ephesians 4:15 in the Passion Translation says, "But instead we will remain strong and always sincere in our love as we express the truth. All our direction and ministries will flow from Christ and lead us deeper into him, the anointed head of his body, the church." And this verse is just really encouraging open and honest communication with a spirit of love, a spirit of respect, and a spirit of understanding. So this can look like speaking the truth. And I also want to acknowledge that there are people that speak the truth, but it is very aggressive and abrasive, and we don't need to be that. Yeah, I don't really need to expand upon that, but we don't need to be brutally honest, I think is the phrase that a lot of people use. There's a way to be truthful and honest while being respectful and kind and loving. So being truthful just means that when you are speaking, it is accurate information. You are genuinely sharing your feelings, and you are providing honest feedback when it's asked for, or asking if you can provide honest feedback rather than just providing it. Truthfulness involves transparency. It involves sincerity. It involves authenticity in our communication, even and especially when truth is difficult and uncomfortable. Clarity. When we are speaking the truth, it's important to communicate clearly and directly. I have been saying this so much lately in these episodes, but clear is kind. Clear communication is kind. Avoid ambiguity. Avoid exaggeration, distorting the truth to make maybe yourself look better or the other person look worse. We want to make sure that our message is understood accurately and effectively because we want to minimize confusion and misunderstanding. Speak with clarity. Don't beat around the bush when it comes to sharing your feelings or your opinions or your wants or your needs. Be clear. Empathy. This is so beautiful and often missed because I feel like empathy and kind of validation go together. And a lot of people think that empathy and validation equals agreement, and it does not. Speaking the truth in love, it requires an empathy. It is a deep understanding and a sensitivity to the thoughts and feelings and experiences of somebody else. We all are perceiving this world very differently. And that is so true. Somebody can take what I say in these videos and hear something completely different. And somebody else can hear this and hear something on the opposite spectrum. We hear things and perceive things and see things through our experiences, through our past, through our perception, our beliefs. All of that affects how we view and see and hear things. And so empathy involves considering how our words may impact another person emotionally. Yeah, that can be a whole other episode there. But we can empathize that somebody's upset, say, with our boundaries. They're hurt. But it doesn't mean that something is wrong with the boundary. Could be. But that's for us to decide, right? So if somebody is offended that we have put up a boundary with them, say you put up a boundary with your parents that they can't call you 5 times a day anymore. They might get a little offended because maybe that's how you've just lived your life for the entirety of your life. But it doesn't mean the boundary's wrong. And you can empathize with them and say, I know this is hard. I know this is a change and it's going to take some getting used to. And we can go through this together. I'm here for you. Empathy, not agreement. Empathy. Respect. When speaking truth and love, this means honoring another person's perspective, listening attentively to their concerns, valuing their own autonomy, like who they are. Respectful communication, it just fosters trust. It fosters openness. It fosters mutual understanding. Because when somebody feels respected, when they talk to you, they're going to want to keep talking to you. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a bad thing. Maybe you don't want everybody coming to talk to you. Another one that's really important in speaking truth and love is timeliness. Ooh, this can be a tough one. It is so important to choose the right time to communicate because we have to take into account the other person and their readiness to receive our message. Speaking truthfully and lovingly at the right time just kind of increases the likelihood of our message being positively received. And I know that it may not ever feel like a good time. And that can be uncomfortable. And sometimes you have to create that time. And that takes work. Our intentions behind speaking the truth, they matter. And so are we motivated by genuine care and concern and desire to grow the relationship, to heal it, to reconcile it, or not? Like, what is our intention? And we can know, if we are honest with ourselves, we know our intention is to shame this person. Our intention is to let this person know how badly they hurt us. Our intention is whatever. Or is our intention coming from a place of, I am okay, and I just want to share with you what this meant to me, what this did to me. It's very differently. It comes across very differently. Are we intending to attack, or are we intending to reconcile? And lastly, about speaking the truth in love, it doesn't end with just telling our message. It also involves offering support and encouragement and guidance during the process. And this could look like following up, checking in, and just seeing if they're doing okay. If there's anything that they need to talk about, giving them the opportunity. The third step in biblical conflict resolution is to listen humbly. James 1:19 says, "My dearest brothers and sisters, take this to heart. Be quick to listen, but slow to speak, and be slow to become angry." Active listening is so important. This approach to communication requires an open mind. It requires a willingness to learn and a genuine respect for a different perspective other than your own. It involves laying aside the ego, the bias, the preconceived notions in order to fully understand and engage with somebody else. And here's what it looks like to listen humbly. Having an open mind. Humility requires being open to new ideas, perspectives, information, even if they challenge our current beliefs and assumptions. It means resisting the urge to immediately dismiss or judge and having an open mind. It requires being curious. Again, earlier, when somebody comes to us with something, we don't have to judge it. We don't have to label it as good and bad, right or wrong. We can simply say, "That's interesting. Can you tell me more about that?" Just ask questions. Genuinely be curious about it. I've said this before in previous episodes, but when we take this 30,000 foot view of something, we kind of separate ourselves from it. And we can show a genuine curiosity to understand their thoughts, their feelings, their experiences, their beliefs, their whatever. Ask thoughtful questions, seek clarification, actively engage with them. Show that you're genuinely interested. Be curious. When we are listening humbly, it also requires respect. And I know we talked about respect earlier, but respect when listening requires engaged eye contact. It requires no distractions, putting the phone away, turning off the TV, turning down the music, positioning your body towards them so that they know that you are engaged, not dominating the conversation, not interrupting. Because we want to create a safe space for them to want to open up to us, to want to share. Even if we don't agree with it, we still would rather connection with others is more important than disconnection. Listening humbly also requires a reflectiveness. It involves reflecting on our own biases and beliefs and thoughts and opinions and perspectives and assumptions. It requires acknowledging that our perspective is not the only valid one there is, and being willing to challenge ourselves, being willing to think that maybe we don't have it all together. We don't know everything. And that goes into humility. Humble listening requires humility. It's the recognition that we do not have all the answers. There's always room for growth. There's always a learning opportunity. It involves acknowledging that we make mistakes and we are also wrong sometimes, and being open to feedback and criticism and differing opinions without being defensive or dismissive. And step 5 is to forgive and show mercy. Colossians 3:13 says, "Tolerate the weaknesses of those in the family of faith, forgiving one another in the same way you have been graciously forgiven by Jesus Christ." If you find fault with someone, release this same gift of forgiveness to them. And like I said earlier, it is so important that we forgive others the way that God has forgiven us. I believe Peter asked Jesus, "How many times are we to forgive?" And Jesus said 70 times 7. Basically, always forgive. I feel like God's not up there keeping tally of how many times he's forgiven us. I sure as heck hope not. But to forgive and show mercy are acts of grace and compassion that involve letting go of that resentment, that anger, that desire for revenge or retaliation towards someone. So let's talk about forgiveness and mercy and what they can look like. So forgiveness is the act of excusing someone for their offense or wrongdoing. It involves relinquishing feelings of bitterness and resentment or the desire to retaliate towards someone. When we forgive someone, we are releasing them from the emotional burden of holding on to grudges or grievances. It doesn't mean that we condone or we forgive the hurt, the action, but we are choosing to move forward without allowing it to affect us anymore. We are not allowing it to impact our lives. We are not allowing it to have a power and a hold over us. So for anybody that has dealt with abuse, we don't condone abuse, but we can forgive the abuser. And that's hard. But we don't want to allow the abuse to have a stronghold over our lives anymore. And so we release it and we give it to God. So showing mercy is sort of a broader concept that encompasses forgiveness, but kind of extends beyond it. So it involves extending compassion and kindness and understanding towards someone who may not deserve it or who has wronged us in some way. Again, God shows us mercy all the time, not getting what we deserve. Mercy involves showing empathy and compassion towards others, even if they haven't shown us the same consideration. Oof. Mercy acknowledges the inherent worth and dignity of every individual, regardless of their actions and their behavior. That's a hard one. And while forgiveness may be directed specifically towards someone who has wronged us, showing mercy also involves acts of kindness or generosity or compassion. So it takes it a step further. I read a book called Total Forgiveness. It's an old book, but it talks about the need to forgive and also asking God to bless them. That is a mercy. That is mercy. Not only do we need to forgive, but extend mercy. And number 5, seek wise counsel. Proverbs 15:22 in the Passion Translation says, your plans will fall apart right in front of you if you fail to get good advice. But if you first seek out multiple counselors, you'll watch your plans succeed. It is so important to find wise counsel and to have wise mentors in your life. It helps you to gain a biblical perspective and biblical guidance when resolving conflict. So seeking wise counsel means actively seeking advice and guidance or input from individuals who are experienced, knowledgeable, and possess a wisdom in a particular area or life in general. They have a deep understanding. These people have a deep understanding of biblical principles and morals. And they have a wisdom that they can give you. This can often look like turning to mentors, pastors, elders in the church, trusted friends who have a strong faith in God. It's important because this allows us to gain valuable perspectives and consider different viewpoints and make informed decisions, because we want to make sure that in conflict resolution, we are following God's example. It is so important. Biblical conflict resolution is important. So even if you are not a Christian, if you don't believe in God, these are still really great, tangible steps to take when attempting to resolve conflict. And I hope that this has been super helpful for you. And I hope that you use these and kind of look at conflict and maybe situations that you've been in conflict differently, and that you just feel better equipped to handle those situations. Thank you so much for tuning into Basically a Therapist, but without the degree. I am just so honored that you are here. And again, if you haven't done so already, hit subscribe, like and share this episode that you think with somebody that you think that it'll encourage and help on their journey. And I'll see you next week. Bye. Yeah.